You know, aging. It's the one thing that gets all of us, right? No exceptions. And forever, for as long as we've been around, we've dreamed of beating the clock. Well, that dream, it's starting to leave the world of fantasy and step right into the science lab. So let's get into it. And this really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. Is aging just inevitable? Something we have to put up with? Or, and this is the big one, is it actually a disease that science can cure? Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at humanity's oldest dream. Then we'll get into why we actually age. After that, the frontier of research, the really cool stuff. Then we've got to talk about the ethics of immortality. And finally, what would our post-aging future even look like? All right, first things first, let's take a step back in time, because it turns out this whole idea of stopping aging, it's not new, not by a long shot. It's built on a foundation that is centuries old. And what's so wild is just how widespread this was. Think about it. You had Taoist alchemists in ancient China trying to create these immortality elixirs. Over in medieval Europe, alchemists were obsessed with finding the philosopher's stone. And of course, you've got Ponce de León sailing the seas, looking for the actual fountain of youth. Different cultures, different times, but the mission? It was always the exact same. Turn back the clock. Okay, so enough about myths and legends, fascinating as they are. Let's jump into the hard science. What is actually going on inside our cells that makes us age? All right, so a huge part of this puzzle comes down to something called telomeres. The best way to think about them, they're like those little plastic tips on the end of your shoelaces. They protect your DNA. But here's the catch. Every single time one of your cells divides, those little caps get just a little bit shorter and shorter, until eventually there's not enough left to do the job and the cell starts to fail. It's literally like a biological countdown clock, a burning fuse inside every one of us. But hey, it's not just about telomeres. Scientists have pretty much zeroed in on 4 main reasons we age. So number 1, you've got that telomere shortening we just talked about. Number 2 is something called cellular senescence. These are basically zombie cells. They're old, they're broken, but they just refuse to die, and they hang around causing all sorts of damage. Third, our mitochondria get damaged. These are the tiny power plants inside our cells, and they just wear out. And fourth, there are epigenetic changes. This is where the instruction manual for our cells gets, well, scrambled. The messages get all mixed up. So, okay, if we know what the bad guys are, these 4 drivers of aging, the big question is, what are we doing about it? And believe me, this is where the story gets really, really interesting. Right now, the scientific community is attacking this problem from a few key angles. You've got CRISPR gene editing. This is incredible stuff, where they can literally go into our genetic code and try to fix the mistakes that build up over the years. Then there are senolytic drugs. Their one and only job is to seek and destroy those zombie cells we mentioned. And third, you have NAD+ boosters, which are basically supplements designed to recharge our cellular batteries, the mitochondria. And this quote from Aubrey de Grey, it just perfectly sums up the massive mindset shift that's happening right now. He says, I view aging as a disease, one that can and should be cured. And that's the key, isn't it? It's about stopping thinking of aging as this unavoidable fate and starting to see it as a problem we can actually solve, like any other disease. And Aubrey de Grey is definitely not a lone voice in the wilderness. There's a whole group of pioneers here. People like David Sinclair at Harvard, who's doing groundbreaking work on NAD+, or Elizabeth Parrish, get this, a CEO so passionate about this that she used herself as the first human guinea pig for her company's gene therapy. Wow, these are the people really on the bleeding edge. But, and this is a huge but, with all this incredible potential comes a whole flood of really, really tough ethical questions. If we can do this, does that really mean we should? And the first question that probably jumps into your mind is the most basic one. Who gets to live forever? Because let's be real, these treatments are going to be expensive. So who gets access? And that leads us down a pretty dark path, doesn't it? A future where humanity literally splits in 2. On one side, you have the super rich who can afford to live for hundreds of years. And on the other, well, there's everybody else, stuck with a normal lifespan. We could be talking about the greatest social divide the world has ever seen. It's a truly chilling thought. Okay, so even if you could solve the fairness issue, think about the logistics. What happens to planet Earth when billions of people just don't die? What does that do to our food supply, our jobs, our resources, the whole system? All right, let's press pause on the heavy ethical stuff for a second and just dream a little. Or maybe have a nightmare, depending on your point of view. What would a post-aging world actually be like? You know, in a way, it's already beginning. You've got this whole biohacker movement. These are people who aren't waiting around for some scientist to give them the green light. They're out there right now experimenting on themselves with cryotherapy, super strict diets, all kinds of supplements, anything to get an edge on aging. And if you look way, way down the road, some people see a kind of step-by-step path to immortality. Step 1 is reaching something they call longevity escape velocity. This is the tipping point where medicine is improving so fast that for every year you manage to stay alive, science adds more than a year to your life expectancy. You're basically outrunning death. From there, maybe we get to a place where we can just grow new organs whenever we need them. And the ultimate endgame? Digital immortality. Literally uploading your mind to a computer. Which brings us right back to the biggest, most profound question of all. We might actually be on the verge of defeating aging, the one thing that has shaped every human life that has ever been lived. But you have to wonder, is our mortality what gives life its meaning? Is it the fact that our time is limited that makes it so precious? If we solve death, do we accidentally erase the very thing that makes us human?